Shalom, Shalom, Israel. It's Brother Zabayella
Brother Marcos.
coming back at you with another W5, W5 history, man. Coming back at you with some more history through the spirit. Shalaki, man. Shalaki. All right. Coming back at you with some W5 history. This week going into the Hasmonean Dynasty. All right. Last week we went into the Grecians, but there was, if you were watching, you may have missed or you may have noticed that we didn't go into a very important part of history of our people during the Grecian Empire, and that was obviously the Hasmonean dynasty, where we got Judas and his brethren going to war, fighting for the laws of Israel that Esau not going to teach you. Esau not going to teach you, in your school system. Esau not going to teach you, in your advanced history class, right? Your advanced history high school class. You got extra credit, you got all types of AP, and you're taking AP classes. Hey, Esau doesn't want to teach you this history. And Esau is not going to teach you this history. So who has to teach you this history? The Jews. And who are the Israelites? You already know we the Israelites. So we got to go into this history, the Hasmonean dynasty, where the word Hanukkah, you grew up, hearing the word Hanukkah. Right, you wondering what that candle is with the seven branches, right? And all of that goes back to our people, and this goes back to history that Esau would teach you in his school system. And guess what? Again, you can't refute the Bible, man. This is true history that we bringing out, right? And as always, we gotta get some precepts in there, right? We gotta get the precepts in there, Got to get the precepts in there because the Most High has been said it. The Most High has been said it. Let me pull this out real quick. You see my screen? Let's go to Job chapter 8 and verse number 8 in the NLT. And it says, Job 8:8, just as the previous generation, pay attention to the experience of our ancestors. This is in the NLT. We have to pay attention to the experience of our ancestors. How was the experience of our ancestors under the rule of the so-called white man during the Greeks, during the time of the Romans? Right? It's going to kind of show you how Esau is going to be during the time of the Americans, right? USA, go Donald J. Trump, right? And another thing, this president that just got elected, Donald Trump, he has the same spirit as these Greek kings that we're going to go into under the Seleucid dynasty, under the Ptolemaic dynasty. He got the same type of prideful Edomite, all should be one, I'm God's spirit. And we're going to go into, these kings, and you're going to see the similarities between Esau back then and Esau right now. I'm going to read it again. For we were, verse 8, just as the previous generation, pay attention to the experience of our ancestors. For we were born but yesterday and know nothing, right? I mean, we didn't know anything before this point. We didn't really know this history. We didn't really know who Judas, Maccabees is, and Simon and Jonathan, and Eleazar, Mattathias, who said no. You didn't know these things. We just knew things of the world and what they taught us. But what? Our days on the earth are as a fleeting as a shadow, but those who came before us will teach you. They will teach you the wisdom of old. And guess what? When we go into these different articles, when we go into the history of our fathers and how they fought for the laws of Israel and the laws of our God against the Edomites, these heathens, against these coons, who we also get into as well. You got a lot of coons amongst our people. Nothing new of old. And guess what? They're going to teach you wisdom on how to survive in those days, how we did survive in those days. But you got it.
Kyle, you go to you let me know if it's feedback too.
That's good.
Kyle, you go to Psalms chapter 77 and verse number 5, the classic. All right, Psalms chapter 77 and verse number 5, and that's right. We bring these precepts out every week. These precepts, they never get old. Are we gonna keep reading? We're gonna keep going back and showing you these precepts on how the Lord requires us to remember the days of old, especially for so-called Black and Hispanics, because the things that's written of you and your history and the knowledge and wisdom that our ancestors had, like the brother said, that's not being brought out in school. You got these HBCUs paying all this money to go to these HBCUs, historical Black colleges, You're not learning any real black history. All right, this is true so-called black history. Learning about the Hasmonean dynasty, and when a bunch of Levites came together, a family of them, and overthrew one of the biggest dynasties ever known to man, the Seleucid dynasty. So this is the book of Psalms, and again, they're not gonna read that to you in church. They're not gonna read that to you in school, because really, this is history. Even the so-called white man, Edom himself, even acknowledges this history. So why isn't this history, if it's so big and so vast, where people even keep a feast they name Hanukkah and all this background behind it? Why isn't this being brought out? It's not being brought out because this is your history, Jay. So this is Psalms chapter 77 and verse number 5. It says, I have considered the days of old, the years of ancient times. So when we read Psalm 77 and 5, King David, he said he considered the days of old. He thought about it. He meditated upon the days of old. All right, he wanted to search out his fathers. So the first step to coming back to your nationality and learning this information is learning where you came from, considering the days of old. And you want to go from considering to, let's go to Psalms 142 and verse number 5. Or you want to be able to say, I considered the days of old, and then be able to say, I remember the days of old. All right, let's go to Psalms 1. I'm going to just bring it out, right?
Psalms what?
Psalms 142 and verse number 5. So even David went from considering the days of old to actually remembering the days of old. That's how we want to be. All right, we want to go from considering where we come from and considering these different things. And after we consider, we want to say, I know these things. I've studied these things. I know my history, my ancestors, my past. All right, you should be able to go into any time point in history and know what your people was doing during the so-called Dark Ages. You want to know what your people was doing during the so-called rule of Moab and the Mongoloidism in that period. You want to know what you was doing during 1619 in that era. You want to know where your people was at. So all throughout history, you should be able, because these nations, they can do that. All throughout history, they know what their people was doing. You should be able to do the same thing through the spirit, using the words of the Lord and filtering it with the history that's backed up behind it. So this Psalms 142 and verse 5. It says, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all thy works. It says, I am mused on the work of thy hands. So again, King David went from saying, I consider the days of old, into saying, now I actually remember the days of old. These are the times to remember the days of old and to, puff forth your hand to remember this knowledge that the Lord has provided in the last days through the
You
Spirit.
said Psalms 142 and 5?
Come, 142 and verse 5. Slack one. That was 143 and 5. Slack 143 and 5. Right, but that's all.
Right.
I can read it again. Slack. Right, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all thy works. I muse on the work of thy hands. All right, you got it.
Huh. So we go into this article. Let me get this one more. Romans chapter 15. Romans 15:4. And it says, whatsoever things were written aforetime. And I ain't gonna lie, I like getting in the NLT. It's kind of like clear cutting, right? But it says such things were written in the scriptures long ago to teach us. So the things that we're going to go into is going to teach us. It's going to help us understand the history that our forefathers went through. The first abomination of desolation, right? The destruction of in the desecration of our temple by these Edomites. And it says that in the scriptures give us hope and encouragement as we wait patiently for God's promises to be fulfilled. So as we wait for this promise for the Most High to be fulfilled, we go into the scriptures to understand that these things were here to teach us how to live for the Most High, even under treacherous and dire times. I mean, you have Christians that say you can't keep the laws in this day and age, but then we look at our forefathers and they kept the laws under times that we're not even living in right now. They kept laws even when they knew you could die for keeping the laws. Right now, you're not going to die for keeping the laws of God. The Most High didn't turn up the heat like that right now, although he will in Jacob's trouble. But right now, you're not going through anything. You can wear your fringes. Imagine getting caught wearing your fringes during the time of Antiochus IV Epiphanies. Imagine that. Imagine getting caught circumcised, and right now you can go, go to the hospital, your baby's born, and you can gotta get circumcised, and they'll ask you to fill out some paperwork. Back then, you couldn't do that. So you got foolish, Christians and other people. You can't keep the laws of God, but our forefathers kept the laws of God under treacherous times, and that is supposed to teach us how to live when those times do come back on the earth, because those times are coming back on the earth. The times that we're going to go into, those are the times that's going to reach the earth again. And guess what? It's going to be like no other day, paraphrasing. It's not going to be like any other day that the Lord said. So we can kind of hop into it through the Spirit. All right. Let me pull up this first article. Let me pull up this article before we even get into it. All right. So now when we go into the Maccabean Revolt, it transformed into a dynasty. That happened, as we know, as the Hasmonean dynasty over a period of 100 and something odd years, right? Starting with Maccabes and going down to Judas. So this is the Maccabean Revolt, worldhistory.org, right? Can you see this?
Don't I see it?
Tom. It says the Maccabean Revolt of 167 and 160 BCE. So it's about a period of 7 years, right? Was a Israelite uprising in Judea against the regression of the Seleucid Empire. So the Seleucid Empire, against the repression of the Seleucid Empire. So the Seleucid Empire was growing around that time, right? Taking over all known Asia. This is during the time where Seleucus II, or Antios II, and Antios III was taken down in, I believe, Antigonus, right? And it says the revolt was led by a country priest called Mattathias, right? A country priest. And his military followers became known as the Maccabees. And his military followers were really just his brothers. Those were just his brothers that felt the same way as Mattathias. He didn't hire a military. Esau, you did that. Hey, guess what? That was just his brother. Successful Jerusalem was captured in the Temple of Jerusalem, reconsecrated, and acts still commemorated today in the Israelite Hanukkah festival. Yeah, we still commemorate these things, right? Because they destroyed our temple, and then we reconsecrated our temple and built back up our temple, right? Now, the Seleucid Empire, and it says after the death of Alexander the Great, the kingdom was divided into 4 during the Wars of the Diadochi, which we went into last week, right? Egypt, the Seleucid Empire, the kingdom of Pergam, and Macedon, including Greece, right? Egypt governed by the Ptolemies, right? So there was allowed for Judaism in Jerusalem to flourish with very little intervening in the 3rd century BCE, right? They, under the Ptolemaic rule, because Israel was in the Levant, the Seleucids and the Ptolemies, they were fighting over the Levant. They was fighting over that region of Israel, the land of Canaan, right? And during the Ptolemaic rule, we generally had, not I want to say peace, but we could keep the laws of the Most High God. It wasn't a lot of oppression that happened. Now, that was for majority of the Ptolemies, because we know some Ptolemies, we were oppressed, right? Some of the Ptolemies, we couldn't keep our laws, right? Let's give an example of that. But generally, under their rule, we were allowed to, more so than the Seleucids. Let's get that real quick. Right, more so than the Seleucids. Let's go to 2nd Maccabees. All right, we'll go to 2nd Maccabees, chapter 6, and we're going to start at verse number 1. 2nd Maccabees 6 and verse number 1. I'll click the KJV. 6 and 11. All right, this is the book of 2nd Maccabees, chapter 6. Let me see what I want. All right, we're going to start at verse 1. Right, 2nd Maccabees 6 and 1. Not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and to not live after the laws of God. So, as you know, this is the repression of the Edomites, right? But this is under the Ptolemaic dynasty, under the Ptolemaic rule. And to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympius, and that in Gerizim of Jupiter, defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in the place. The coming of in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people, for the temple was filled with rioting and reveling by the Gentiles who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within a circuit of the holy places. And besides that, brought in things that were not lawful, right? Desecrating our temple. The altar also was filled with profane things which the law forbidden. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath days or ancient feasts or profess himself at all to be a Jew. And in the day of the king's birth, every month they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. And when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivory. Moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy. So under the Ptolemaic dynasty, under Ptolemaic rule, they were doing these things. It wasn't the solutions yet. They were doing this thing under Ptolemy. Now, some, like I said, more so some of the Ptolemaic kings, we were able to keep our laws a lot more, but not all the way. We weren't free. They were still defiling our temple with harlots and all things of swine and things that weren't lawful. And it says against the Jews that they should observe the same sacrifices, be partakers of the sacrifices. And whoso would not conform themselves to the manner of the Gentiles should be put to death, that a man might see his present misery. And it goes into show what they did to our women and what they did to our men for keeping the Sabbath days and circumcising our children. But that was under Ptolemy, you know. And if that was happening under Ptolemy, you would see what's going to happen under Antiochus IV. All right. But let me go back to this. All right, let me jump down a little bit. So if you can see, we brought out the map last week. This is kind of, let me know if you can see this map, boss.
Kind of see it.
Right, so if you can see, this is the Hellenistic kingdoms 301 BC after the death of Alexander the Great. And you can kind of see some timelines here, right? But you have the Seleucid dynasty under really Antiochus III after the Battle of Rapha, with Ptolemy III, where his empire expanded. As you can see, it's expanded throughout Asia. And then eventually, this is the Levant. This is where Israel is, Tyre, Gaza, as you can see. And they took over. Ptolemaic rule was over Israel, and they took over, taking this in parts of the Levant, and where Ptolemy had, they took that over, and then you had, a lot of oppression that was done to our people. And we can actually pull this up. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. I don't got the map, but it's all good. We can go back to this. But you can see how they kind of took that over and how the solutions were taken down the Ptolemies, right, for Israel. Right, so let's go back to that. Now,
So I got a point.
Con.
Yeah, and I believe we touched on that last week because something called the Six Syrian Wars, where we touched on it. We ain't going deeply in on it, but it is, in-depth breakdowns on Daniel, the 11th chapter on the channel. So if you want that breakdown with in-depth, how the war went with the Six Syrian Wars, you had the Ptolemaic and the Seleucid dynasty. They warred over that, like the brother said, they warred over that Levant area, for a period of time. And of course, Israel was dead smack in the midst of that joint, So that is some good history to touch on.
Con, yeah, the Six Syrian Wars. We briefly, like I mentioned it last week. That's another part of the Grecian Empire that, a lot. There's a lot to the Grecian Empire. You get the Hasmonean dynasty. You kind of had the overview of what's going on. The Six Syrian Wars, where the Seleucids and the Ptolemies were battling for generation after generation, and like the brother said, Israel was in the middle of that. And then we're gonna specifically see what happens when we were under the Seleucid rule. We seen what happened under the Ptolemaic rule. We can kind of keep our laws a little bit, although it wasn't perfect, still getting put to death. but under the Seleucid rule, it was a lot more grievous, right? Now, it says the second temple of Jerusalem was the most important structure to the entire Israelite community, right? Because we just rebuilt the temple under the Persian rule, under Darius II, Cyrus the Great, right? Under Xerxes, right? Xerxes the fourth, Artaxerxes. So we was building the temple back up with our fathers. It was Zerubbabel, Joshua, Ezra, and they desecrated it. And it says it was the social and religious center of the Israelite people. Not to mention the economic benefits of trading in the temple, right? So you have people doing trade in the temple. I mean, making the Lord's house of merchandise. But more importantly, however, it was considered a sign of the Most High's presence among them, right? The Lord dwelt among us. This feeling of the elect, the chosen ones, was crucial to the Israelite self-conscious. And that's true. The feeling of the elect and being chosen, we want to be chosen. So every day we're self-conscious about what we do because we want to be a part of that. But we actually had a physical temple, right? Scrolling down, it says in 198 BCE, all of the goodwill of the Israelite community towards the governing body turned to hatred as the Seleucid Empire defeated the Ptolemies. You see that? The 6 Syrian Wars, they took over the Levant. And guess what? All the goodwills and the things we did in the community, and guess what? It was turned to hatred once Antios III, this is after Antios III came on the scene, taking control of Judea. As the Seleucid Empire expanded, so too did their notion of Hellenism. The Seleucids under Antios III controlled much of the Arabian Peninsula, forcibly converting many of his new populace to great culture and religion, and the intent in the homogeny continued as they took Jerusalem. So they didn't stop. When they took down Israel, they didn't care about what you were doing. They didn't care about your laws. They said you're gonna do what the rest of these people are doing that we took down. Right? Antiochus wanted to Hellenize the Israelite community. His aim was to remove any features of Judaism that can define it from the Greek religion and other accepted monotheistic religions. Because of the benefits of Greek culture, which included what? Economic integration. And that's what Jake liked. You ever Marcos, we ever asked Jake what's going on in our community, they say, we need to build our own communities up. We need finances. We need to start partnering with banks. We need to create our own banking system. That's where that comes from. Economic integration. That's all they're saying. We just need to team up with Esau, rely on his money, right? And guess what? We will be good as a people. And that's what they were pushing. That was economic integration. That it came with money and perks if you say to the Greek culture of life, because Jake was chasing that money. Between all of the Greek states and the pressure of regime, many Israelite people accepted Hellenism because guess what? Of economic integration. Titus' father was a Greek. Timothy's father was a Greek, raised by his mother and his grandmother, because Jake chasing that dollar, man. Bow down to the Greek way of life, just like in America today, bowing down to the American society, selling your soul just for that dollar. And there's nothing new under the sun. Let's scroll down a little bit. Let's get that point. Did I freeze?
Yeah, I was gonna say your screen wasn't showing, but it's back up.
It's back up.
Kind of stuff now.
Okay, my computer froze. Kyle, you can say something real quick, Carl.
Yeah, that's right. And I wanted to get this quick precept too. Yeah, like the brother said, Jake, he always looking for a way to get money. That's why when you read John the 2nd chapter, kind of like on what the brother said, even during the time of the Greeks, you had men out of all places to sell and to do trade. They wanted to choose the temple of the Lord. And during the time of the so-called New Testament, in the Roman Empire, Jake was in that same spirit. They went to the temple because the temple, it was a place where you stored the money. It was the place where, you kept the treasury. I believe you went into it last week. All right, you have we may go into it today. You have Simon the Benjamite and Onias the high priest. And Onias, he kind of stored up certain goods within the temple for the widows and the fatherless and things like that. And there was much money in the temple. So Jake, they would go inside that temple and sell, all type of things, which is off. Because everything that goes into the temple, that's consecrated unto the Lord. So this is the book of John, chapter 2, and verse, let me see when I want to start. John chapter 2, and I'm going to start at verse 13. Right? It says, and the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Yahushua went up to Jerusalem and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves and the changers of money, sitting. Out of all the places you could be selling these things, you want to choose the temple of the Lord. That's off. That just show how covetous Jake is, man. So I mean, again, you have markets. You have markets back then. You have markets, sellers, vineyards and farms. Yeah, all this land you could have been selling. You choose the temple of the Lord, the most holy place. What a Levite said. You got the holy, the holiest, the holy. It's this big, big deal about the temple according to the law on how clean it is, and yet you have men just going in there selling things. But they did that under the mindset of the so-called Greeks. All right, reading on it says that's what Yahushua did when he found that out, because that's not a light thing. All right, it's not a light thing to just go into the temple and just sell your own merchandise and sell cattle, and oxen. That's all. It says verse 15, and when he had made a scourge of small cords, so the Lord he made a handmade whip. Right? We don't know where we got the material from. We don't know where we got the cords from. We don't know in depthly what he added onto that whip, whether it was some nails or just something that hit him with some. Nevertheless, the Lord he made a scourge with small a scourge with small cords. It says, and he drove them all out the temple, right, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers of money and overthrew the tables. So the Lord he kind of went back, and Yahweh is a man of war. That's Exodus 15:3. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. So he kind of sat back, right, made the scourge. We don't know how long it took him. Walked into that temple. Probably don't know how long it was. You see the scourge dragging behind him, kicked down the door, and he just started beating everyone and driving everyone out the temple. It said the cattle, right? Even the cattle and the oxen, they got it too, the sheep. Why? Because that's not a place of merchandise. Let's go to Second Maccabees. We might have brought this out last week, but let's go to Second Maccabees, the third chapter, and show what the temple and the use of the temple is really for. So this is the book of Second Maccabees, chapter 3. I want to get right to the point. In verse number, I'm gonna start at verse 7, and then I'm gonna start at verse. So count is really good. I'm gonna start at verse 6, and then jump down. All right, this first Mac. I'm gonna start at verse 5. Right, First Maccabees, chapter 3, and verse 5. It says, and when he could not overcome Onias, talking about Simon. So during this time, which is around the time of the Greeks, of course, you had Simon, who was a high priest, and you had not Simon, you had Onias the high priest, and you had Simon who envied Onias through his righteousness. It says, and when he cannot overcome Onias, he got him to Apollonius, the son of Threas. So Simon, he kind of went to the heathen. Apollonius is a so-called white man. He went to the Greeks. So he seen he couldn't overthrow his brother. So he went to the so-called white man and helped him overthrow his own brother who was keeping the laws already. Right? It says, and when he cannot overthrow Onias, he got him to Apollonius, the son of Threas, who, when he was governor of Syria and Phoenice, told him that the treasure in Jerusalem was full of infinite sums of money. And that's why they did a lot of trade in that area that the brother went into. Why? Because the temple, it was filled with infinite sums of money. Right? And that money wasn't there for vanity. It's gonna tell you what that money was there for. It says, so that the multitude of their riches which did not pertain to the account of the sacrifices, was innumerable, and that it was possible to bring it all into the king's hand. So they wanted to steal and rob the temple. Jumping down to verse number 10, right? And this is what the sums of money was for. Verse 10. It says, then the high priest told him that there was such money laid up for the relief of widows and fatherless children. So that temple was for who? Or that money that was in the temple, it was for the widows, right? Women whose husbands had died, maybe in war, maybe through, God knows what. That money was for the widows. Again, the man back in the ancient world, he was the breadwinner. So if the man kind of left, how was that women gonna make money? All right, it's through the alms that the people would give to the temple and it would go back to the people. And it said for the fatherless as well, for the children. And that's why a lot of times you see in our culture, it's off. But like how the brother brought out, they were selling in the temples. We seen during the time of Yahushua, they were selling in the temples. Now it's because the temple it was stored up, for righteousness. But Jake, he would use it for wickedness and look at it as a profit to gain money by finessing his own people, you know. But you got it. I was just going into that point that you made on how they was selling in the temple.
Con, you already brought out John.
John 2.
Yeah.
Come.
Okay, Con. Yeah, the Lord was whooping they behind. For that, man. Scores of small cords, but and they were still doing it. But guess what? They found out they can make more money if they decided to go to gymnasiums. We gonna get into it. They had naked hot baths. Oh, and Jake was getting down with naked hot baths, hot springs, just unwinding themselves. Wow. All right, let's continue on with the lesson. All right. Okay, Khan. Lord willing doesn't do. Look, and Satan trying to take away the life, man. Satan trying to take away the life with connections, and it's going slow. We getting into it, right? See, when we was talking about Esau, this wasn't happening, but now we talking about our people during the Greek code nine, and all of a sudden this one. All right, but can you hear me? Okay, King.
Khan, yeah, you some move.
All right, Khan, and it says they already strained relations between the pious Israelite people that did not accept Hellenism, right? It was already strained because we read under Ptolemy that guess what? Every month the Feast of Bacchus was kept, they made us eat swine's flesh. And he was killing and murdering our people for keeping the law still. So it was already strained. But guess what? And the Seleucid Empire was shattered when Antiochus Epiphanes adopted his father's policy of universal Hellenization, but they took it to new heights. They brought it to a whole nother level. This man brought it to a whole nother level, as hard it already was to keep the laws under the Ptolemaic rule. This man then brought it to a new height, a new level, man, of evil and persecution towards our people. It says, as Epiphanes looked at Alexander the Great of Macedon and aspired to have his name in history books alongside him, he needed to distinguish himself above his predecessors. And that's the spirit of Esau. That's the spirit of Esau, of wanting him to distinguish himself above his predecessors, right? Above his forefathers. Didn't Tubal Cain do that against Cain? He said, I've slain a man to my hurt and to my wounded. Paraphrasing, right? Basically saying, hey, guess what? If Cain grew sevenfold, I got to get more than that. Let me go to Genesis chapter 4 real quick.
Yeah, he was lusting for the Most High to commit judgment on him.
Yeah, he was like, hey, man. I want to get exactly what he said. I don't want to misquote it because it was evil. It was the way he said it was perfectly evil. It's a feedback a little bit.
It's verse 24.
Yep. All right, kind. And it says, Genesis chapter 4, In verse 23, and Lamech said unto his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech, hearken unto my speech, for I've slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt, to your hurt, right? But that's how Esau is, right? If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. This man wanted to be above his predecessors. He wanted to be above Cain. He wanted more. That's evil. He wanted more judgment than Cain. He said Cain's only going to get sevenfold. I need 77-fold. I need to be the Edomite that receives the most judgment from the Lord. That means I was the most wicked. Yeah, if I can get more judgment from God, that means I'm more wicked. And whoever's the most wicked, which is me, will be the best Edomite to ever live. That's literally their mindset. He wanted more judgment than Cain. And guess what? That was Antiochus the fourth mindset. He wanted to be the most evilest person so he can have his names written in history books. And guess what? We're talking about him right now. The greatest persecutor of Israel, amongst other Edomites. But we can keep going. It says, as Epiphanes looked at Alexander the Great of Macedon and inspired his name in the history books alongside him, he needed to distinguish himself above his predecessors. The best way to do that, he thought, was to enforce the Greek culture on all the Israelite population, a feat that had been so far elusive. He accepted a bribe and approved the takeover of Jason of the Oniad family, the now de facto client position of high priesthood. So also during this time, you had coons. You had coons. Let's go to the book of Second Maccabees. You had a lot of coons. And this coon, Jason, was damn near chief of them all. Right? Let me get this real quick. In Second Maccabees chapter 7. All right, this is the book of Second Maccabees, chapter 7. And I'm going to start at verse 15. Actually, Second Maccabees chapter 2, verse 7. We're going to read about this man named Jason. This Second Maccabees chapter 2 and verse number 7. Make sure I'm second Mcab. So is this what I want? Read about this man named Jason. Let me see if this is what I want. That's not what I want. Actually, you got it, King. I'm gonna try to find what I want real quick.
Let's go to First Maccabees chapter 1. I like the brother said, there was a lot of coonery going. You know, anytime Jake get around a heathen, you know it's gonna be coonery. You know it's gonna be madness and folly, and you know Jake. See, we're such in a lower state, and Jake see all these heathens that's above him. Jake think if he cleave unto the likeness of the heathens, that he's gonna be accepted, and if he's accepted by these nations, then by default his status is gonna be far above his brother. And you know that's a wicked mindset to have, right? Let's go to First Maccabees, the first chapter, and I'm gonna read verse 11. It's First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 11. It says, "In those days went there out of Israel wicked men," and that's always and that's one thing in our custom too. No matter what time period you in, there's always gonna be wicked men in Israel, coons and all type of men. Like you get a lot. It's gonna be a lot of Charleston white. A lot of what's that one brother name off the Boondocks?
Who? Ruckus?
Yeah, Uncle Ruckus. I believe his name, like you said, Uncle Ruckus. It's gonna be a lot of men like those. The dude from off what's that, Django, Samuel L. Jackson?
Yep.
Right, that Massa. Gonna be a lot of those brothers. So back then during the time with the Greeks, you had a lot of those men out there just wanting to sell them souls for the so-called white man. So it said, in those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, meaning since we left the heathen, we have had much sorrow. That's off. I mean, how much more wicked can that statement be? Ever since we left the white man, we've been sad. I've never heard an account of a Chinese man saying that. Ever since we lost the white man, we've been sad. You never heard the Arab man say that. The Hamite man. It's always Jake. For some odd reason, Jake again his likeness is to do wickedness and cleave to the heathen. I'm gonna jump down to verse 43. It says verse. I'm start of verse. Man, start of verse 41. It says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws, so that the heathen agree according to the commandment of the king. Yeah, why would you leave your laws and leave your integrity and leave your heritage just because a man told you to? That's off. The man said, kill yourself. You gonna kill yourself? Like that's what that type of mindset Jake was in. Whatever Esau said he was gonna do. If Antiochus said all the Jews kill themselves, you're gonna have a lot of coon Jews that was gonna do. If you had Antiochus, whatever decree he put out, they was gonna follow because they wanted the likeness and the appreciation of the so-called white man. That's Jake today. That's your modern day Charleston whites. I believe the brother just came out with another interview. He had on the Trump and the Confederate flag around his shoulders. He had Donald Trump chocolate bars, and I didn't even know he had chocolate bars.
Me neither.
He had all type of madness. But again, you have men like those in the days of old. It says, and everyone should leave his laws, so that the heathen agreed according to the king's commandment. Yet many also of the Israelites consented to his religion. And this ain't know that this is the so-called black man. Just reading this, you can tell that these are black coons right here. It says many of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. So they left the laws of the Lord and just went up to follow. Like the brother from the going to, you had Jason, who goes down in history as one of the cheapest coons that took part in this madness. What you got here?
Con. And yeah, Jason, he was him and his brother Menelaus.
Yeah.
Super coons. Right? They had super coons. They were super coons. Right? I wrote the wrong precept, but in 2 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 7. Con. Right? It's 2 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 7. But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanies, right? So after the death of Antiochus III, right? We just read after Antiochus III, he wanted to kind of unite all of, Israel under the Greek culture. Then his son took it to new heights. But while his son, Antiochus IV, Epiphanes, was taking it to new heights, oppressing our people, you had a man named Jason, the brother Onias. Now, we read about Onias. Onias was a faithful man, right? But his brother was evil. Right, labored underhand to be the priest. Even Onias was laying up things for the widows, things for the for the fatherless children. But his brother, all he could see was, guess what? The money. I want to be high priest. He wasn't sincere. So guess what he did? Promising unto the king by intercession 303 score talents of silver and another revenue 80 talents. Besides this, he promised to assign 150 more if he might have license to set him up a place for exercise and for the training up of the youth in the fashions of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of the Antiochians. He said, guess what? I will pay you to bring your heathenish customs into Jerusalem so you can have boys work out naked and we can consent to your religion. But let me be the high priest. Let me be over that wickedness like you are over your wickedness, right? Which when the king had granted and had gotten into his hand the rule, he forth brought his own nation to the Greekish fashion. So this man right here is a super coon. He paid to do evil. Like he literally paid for our people to be under Greek fashion. Right? And it says, and the royal privileges granted of special favor to the Jews by the means of John the father Eupolemus, who went ambassador to Rome for amity and aid. He took away and putting down the governments, which were according to the law, he brought up new customs against the law. For he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself, and brought the chief young men under his subjection, like the top young men, and made them wear a hat. And if you know what this is going into pedophilia, right? In Greek culture, you had a lot of male servants, you had a lot of men servants and little boys that would wear a hat to signify who their master was, and they usually tended to walk around naked and do things with their master, right? But nonetheless, now such was the height of Greek fashions and an increase of heathenish manners through the exceeding profanities of Jason. This is all through Jason. This is all through Onias' brother. He an Israelite. All through him that all of these things are happening. Pedophilia, men working out naked, right? Damn Greek sacrifices to Athena and Zeus. That ungodly wretch and no high priest. That the priest had no courage to serve anymore at the altar. That you had the high priest of Aaron's lineage. They say we can't even do this no more. We look, nah, you going, he going crazy. We can't even serve the Most High in His temple at the altar. But what? But despising the temple and neglecting the sacrifices, hasten to be partakers of the unlawful allowance to the place of exercise after the game of discus called the fourth. And that's where you get your discus, your shot put, all of that in the Olympics. But these high priests, they converted. They's like, you know what? We might as well just get down with Esau. Not setting by the honors of their fathers, but liking the glory of the Grecians best of all, man. And guess what? You even had our high priests all under Jason. They wanted to be just like the Greeks, and that's what you have leading up. As we're gonna get into it, the book of the New Testament, where you have neither Jew nor Greek. Why you hear these terms? Because you have these things happening during the Grecian Empire of our people being Hellenized. You have some.
Yeah, I had a quick point too, and all the wickedness that Jason did, believe it or not, that still wasn't enough for Esau. Jason, I believe it was Antiochus. He ended up kicking Jason out of being over the Jews and set up Menelaus because Jason, he didn't meet a standard. I can't remember what it was verbatim, but he couldn't meet a standard, and he kicked out Jason and brought in Menelaus, and Menelaus was, still wicked, So it's man. We read Second Maccabees and First Maccabees, and you see the combs. It just vexed your spirit. I got a quick precept if you was done.
I was gonna bring out Menelaus next, but you got it.
Okay, Kyle, I'm gonna touch on Jason real quick. This is the next chapter. It's Second Maccabees chapter 5 and verse, man, right. I'm gonna start at verse 5. Second Maccabees 5 and 5. It says, now when there was gone forth a false rumor, as though Antiochus had been dead, Jason took at least 1,000 men and suddenly made an assault upon the city. And they that were upon the walls being put back, and the city at length taking Menelaus into the council. It's like Menelaus fled into the council. But Jason slew his own citizens without mercy. Who's his own citizens? The Israelites. He took his own brethren, his cousins, his family, his loved ones, and he slew them without mercy. So he committed great atrocity upon his own brethren without mercy. I mean, I want to say it can't get no more wicked than that. But Jake, Jake be topping himself in wickedness. He'll go above and beyond and find something else to do more wicked than this. But that's a terrible mindset to have, to slay your own citizen, your own countrymen without mercy. It says not considering that to get the day of them, of his own nation, would be most unhappy day for him, but thinking they have been his enemies and not his countrymen whom he conquered. So he looked at them as enemies and not his own countrymen whom he conquered. And that shows the coonery and the wicked, sick mindset that our people had during that time and during these times. A lot of coons got put to death back then. You read it, we was going over this yesterday, with the brother I know when he was teaching. You have Phineas. All right, Phineas, he brought a Midianitish woman into the camp and got slew. So if you was a coon back then, if you wanted to join yourself to the nations, you was getting killed. That's treason. You going against your own nation to please another nation, just compromising the whole kingdom. That's off. Men like that not gonna make it in the last days. But I just wanted to bring that point up.
I want to jump down to verse number 23, or just verse number 15. Yeah, that's it's traitor to your country, man.
Hey, it's like one more quick thing. Look like you got a coon in the chat too. So that's the spirit, man. Men like Michael, you know,
Yeah, Michael, what are you doing? Let me see.
just calling brothers conspiracy theorists. Never heard a Chinese man say that.
Yeah. Well, you can't. That's Satan at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, this history still gonna go out through the spirit, man. And we gonna call it like how it is. Like I said, we had a lot of coons back then, man. A lot of coons, right? This is verse 15. Yeah, he was not content with this. We wasn't even content with this. Everything, Makwash, you just brought out, he wasn't satisfied with. He said, what more level of coonery can I do? Charging up his inner coonery, man. Right? But presume to go into the most holy temple of all the world. Wow. Menelaus, that traitor to the laws and to his own country, being his guide. Right? And taking the holy vessels with polluted hands and with profane hands, pulling down the things that were dedicated by other kings by the augmentation and glory of honor of the place, he gave them away. And so haughty was Antiochus in mind. This man, Antiochus, was evil. And Menelaus led him there. Please desecrate my father's temple. That he considered not that the Lord was angry for a while for the sins of them that dwelt in the city, and therefore his eye was not upon the place. For as soon, let me actually jump down to verse number 23. And it says, in that garrison, Andronicus, and besides Menelaus, who worse than all the rest, bearing heavy hand over the citizens, having a malicious mind against his countrymen, the Jews. So he went harder on our people than Esau did. He was even more wicked than Jason. This is Jason's brother. But you had a high level of coonery as well. That helped actually bring Hellenization upon our people. But we can get the next article if you have.
No, I ain't got nothing. Let's go to the next article.
Come on, what you
got? Levi sent. You can touch on the Salakia.
The revolt.
First. I sent them in order. You can tap on the first one. I sent.
Siege of Jerusalem.
Kinda. Was that the first one?
No.
The first one that I sent. But yeah, that's right though. You got during the election, you had Eve, man, right? She found out Trump came. I don't know if brother seen it, but the mighty Captain Casadia, he did a video on election when Trump came into office. You had Eve. She said she went to sleep and she woke up and seen that Trump was president. She was just crying tears of joy, and she was just saying God saved America by bringing Trump into office and all type of madness. Those spirits was back on the earth. God forbid that someone crying tears of joy because Trump came into office. But you can go to the Maccabean Revolt, that article, the Battle of Beth Sur. But I want to get this. In First Maccabees, though, chapter 2, to establish the foundation of the Hasmonean dynasty. So like we was going through, you had all these atrocities and all these coons, and you had all these wicked men in Israel that did these things. But like how the brother also went into all these things, they got put to an end at some point. See, Jay get fed up so much. There's only so much you can take. So this is the book of First Maccabees, chapter 2 and verse 1. You had a righteous rebellion led by Menethias. So this is the book of First Maccabees, chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, in those days arose Menethias. What is it talking about? We read the first chapter, the days when it was all hell breaking loose, and Antiochus is coming in and ransacking the temple, and all type of folly and madness is being played in within the nation. In those days, raised up Antios. It says the son of John, right? The son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Jared from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And that go back to the sons of Eleazar, right? From that Jared, you had a lot of priests, but that namely go back to Eleazar, the son of Aaron through the Spirit. Verse 2, it says, and he had 5 sons, right? Joannan called Cadus, Simon called Thassi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Avaron, and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphus. And he had his 5 sons with him. And Menethias, he wasn't an average Joe. Again, Menethias, he was a Levite. We talked about this last night too, you got something called the zeal of Levi. Now, you don't find that term in the scripture, but when you read the precepts, you see how Levi and that zeal that they have for the Most High was kind of higher than the rest of the tribes. And through the zeal of Menethias and his strong love and desire for God's commandments, he stood up for the nation, for the righteous right of the nation. So I'm going to jump down a verse, and this goes into the rebellion and the start and the foundation of the Hasmonean dynasty. So this is the book of First Maccabees, chapter 2, and verse number, I'm going to start at verse, I'm going to start at verse 20, right? I'm going to start at verse 20. So to get the context, Menethias, he gave this mighty, beautiful speech. All right, we read the second chapter on keeping God's laws, and he gave great exhortation to the people, seeing all the wickedness and the folly that was happening. So in the midst of him giving this exhortation, it's the latter part of it, verse 20. It says, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances, right? Because Jason and Menelaus, he wanted men to go away from the Lord and join to the Greeks. Menethias is saying, hey, me and my sons, we're not getting down with that. Verse 22, we will not hearken to the king's word to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left. Now, when he had left speaking of these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar, which was at Modin. So as Menethias is giving this beautiful speech and he exhorting the people, he in the spirit right now. You had one of those coon Jews walked up, and like I said, we talked about this last night. Jake, he got that shit spirit. You over here, you talking, you giving out this exhortation about how we not going to the ways of the heathen. It's cool. He walking up, probably with some pig. Shit, I'm gonna do me. I'm alter up. He gonna keep talking. I'm gonna alter this up real quick.
Yeah.
Go then. Jake, he want to do his own thing. So as Jake walking up to the altar at Modin, it says, where was I at? Right, according to the king's commandment, which thing when Menethias saw. So when Menethias saw this man walking up about to sacrifice, it says he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to shew his anger according to judgment. This brother just exhorted the nation, and in the midst of that, you trying to pull down what he just built up through the spirit. So that'll put a spirit on you, like, brother, like you didn't just hear the speech that I gave. So you gotta imagine the mindset of Menethias right now. Israel is going off. He's the priest. His spirit is made to serve the Most High. If you see wickedness and you see it, your own brethren about to sin in front of you, a sin unto death, it said his zeal was according to judgment. It says, wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner, he compelled that who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Thus dealt zealously for the law of God, like Phineas did unto Zambri, the son of Salam. And from that point on, all hell broke loose in righteousness. All right, he killed the Jake, right? That was a coon. And on top of that, he killed the king's commissioner who was compelling men to get down with that wickedness. Most likely that was an Edomite too. So Menethias, he got a 2-for-1. He kind of ran up on the altar, and we don't know what he had. We don't know if he had a dagger, a sword, a javelin, and a lot of those altars got stairs. You got to kind of go up on the stairs. So he probably ran up on the stairs, jumped, slew the Jake, turned around, did some cold move, killed the king's commissioner, and he had to get up out of there because at that point he installed a rebellion within the nation. I'm gonna jump down to verse number. This whole thing is really good. I'm gonna jump to verse 28. It says, "So he and his sons fled into the mountains." All right, he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that they ever had. It's like that they had in the city. All right, and they had to get up out of there to flee persecution, get the game plan together because they was about to start. This is the beginning of a start of a very big, revolution. Hence why it's called the Maccabean Revolt. But you got it. If you
Con.
had anything.
No, you got it. We can go back into the article.
Okay, Connor. So when you read the book of First Maccabees, the second chapter, the third chapter, time will permit us to go into each battle that was fought. Nevertheless, it was a series of battles fought over time from the first from the second chapter to the fourth chapter. So going into this article, you read about one of the battles that was talked about, in the fourth chapter, the decisive battle. Now I'm on my Salakia. I'm on my phone right now, so it's kind of, I can't even see the words on the screen for real. So I'm gonna try to. You can yeah, you can probably zoom in. All right, Salakia. Right. It says this is the background, the Battle of Beth Sur. Now this is a battle that you read about in First Maccabees, the fourth chapter. We're gonna go into it. It says the Battle of Beth Sur, right, known as the Battle of Beth Zur or the Battle of Beth Sur, occurred during the Maccabean Revolt, a Judean rebellion against the Seleucid Empire around 165 BC. The Maccabean Revolt was sparked by the oppressive policies of Antiochus V Epiphanes, who attempted to suppress Judean religious practices and enforce Hellenistic culture in Judea. The revolt was led by Judas Maccabeus, one of the sons of Mattathias, who railed Judean fighters to resist Seleucid rule. So this is the background on how all things played out. Now you don't gotta go. I'm gonna read this real quick. You don't gotta go to it if you want. But this First Maccabees chapter 2 and verse number 65. Because remember, the Lord, he made Judas out of all his sons that we read in the latter part of chapter 2. He gave certain sons certain offices according to their spirit. So this First Maccabees chapter 2 and verse 60. What is that? Verse 66. It says, "For Judah, as for Judas Maccabeus, because during this time, Menethias, he was always about to give up the ghost, so he's about to set up order, leading up to the rebellion that his sons is about to complete after he gave up the ghost." So this says, First Maccabees 2 and 66. "As for Judas Maccabeus, he hath been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain to fight the battle of the people, to take also unto you those that observe the law, and avenge ye the strong of your people." So Mattathias, he set up his son Judas, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was the third right oldest. He set up Judas according to his zeal in his leadership to be captain. Right, he was the third oldest, so second to last. So Judas was set up to be the captain of the host. So as he's captain of the host, that's why you read in that article that it was led by Judas, because Mattathias, he set him up to lead his brethren, and that's a very humbling thing from the rest of the brothers too, to have your little brother lead you in battle. That show what type of spirit that the Maccabees moved in. They moved in a very militant brotherhood, and there wasn't any strife or madness or contention between the five through the spirit versus the rest of the seed line, that we're gonna get into. Nevertheless, we can go back to the article. So I wanted to touch on that quick point. That's why instead of saying Mattathias, you see Judas led the battle. Because before Mattathias gave up the ghost, he set up Judas to be the captain of the host. It says under Seleucia response, right? It says Antiochus Epiphanes, facing a rebellion in Judea, dispatched a large Seleucian army to suppress the uprising and restore in order the region. The Seleucian forces, commanded by various generals, and when you read the Maccabees, it's a lot of generals that the so-called white man tried to set up to stop this. All right, a lot of generals. You can't stop the work of the Lord. If it's of the Most High, you can't stop it. I mean, they got the top man there. Man, they had Georgius. They had a lot of men. They had Georgius, Apollonius. They had a lot of men. Nevertheless, none of these generals that they set up could prevail against the rebellion that the Lord has set up. Reading on, it says, what else? It says, sought to crash the Judean rebellions and to reassert Seleucia control over Judea. As part of their campaign to quell the revolt, the Seleucian army advanced into Judea, seeking to engage the Judean rebels in decisive battles. It says Beth Sur, a fortified town strategically located on the main route between Jerusalem and Hebron, became a focal point of the conflicts, right? Then you got the next part of the battle. So let's get that account in First Maccabees, chapter 4. You got something called the Battle of Beth Sur. Let's go to First Maccabees, chapter 4, and verse number.
Can I get this real quick, Precept King?
Con, you got it.
I want to just touch on this kind of Judas just a little bit, just kind of why he even got his name Maccabees. Just kind of going into the hammer.
Yeah, Con, I did see it. Yeah.
Yeah, his name, kind of going into the hammer through the spirit. Right? And I got an article on it, but I'm just going to pull this precept for time's sake. And it says, First Maccabees 3:1, that his son Judas called Maccabees rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so all did that held with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. It's like you can mute kids with this feedback. Kind of says, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all that held with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he got his people great honor and put on a breastplate as a giant and girt his warlike harness about him. And he made battles protecting his host with his sword. So he rose up in his father's stead and he continued the battles, in his father's stead. And he, guess what? In one of the battles that we're reading about, Battle of the Sword, this is what he was doing. Let me actually get this in Sirach chapter 30, because I mean, like any great father, you will set up your son in your stead. And that's what he did. It's Sirach chapter 30. He left him avenger, right? Sirach 30 and verse 3. He that cheateth his son grieveth the enemy. Why? Because Esau doesn't want you learning that your forefathers led the charge against him and that they were trying to take away your laws. So now if we raise our sons and daughters up in these laws, guess what? It grieves him. And before his friends, he shall rejoice in him. Though his father die, yet he is as though he were not dead. For he have left one behind that is like himself, man. And Mattathias left behind 5 sons which were like himself, man. Judas the one leading the charge, So when you go back to it, First Maccabees chapter 3, Judas being the leader of the battle, called the hammer, was like what? And it says, verse 4, in his acts, he was like a lion and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked and sought them out and burnt up those that vexed his people. He was burning people alive. He wasn't a soft man. I don't imagine Judas being 5'3", 190 pounds scrawny. If Judas was on the earth, he he kind of had to point his glasses up a little. No, he was a strong man. You see Judas, you'll be like, damn, right? That's Judas Maccabees for you and his brethren. They lived in the wilderness since they was a youth, right? Wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled because salvation prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Why? Because we still talking about this man today. In one of the battles, like as an example, a testimony of Judas and his brother is the battle of Besor. But you got it, King.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You read furthermore in the third chapter, you see how Judas he took Apollonius' sword, man,
Mm-hmm.
and fought with it all the days of his life. So Judas he wasn't a. Is that the third chapter?
Yeah, 3:12. I got it right here.
Yeah. I'm gonna read that real quick and say, uh, wherefore Judas took their spoils and Apollonius' sword also, and wherewith he fought all his life long. And that's going into one of the earlier battles that Judas had. He kind of killed Apollonius, who was a heathen, a so-called white man. Took his sword and fought with his sword all the days of his life, man. That's what David did when he killed Goliath. Or I believe he took his sword too, and kept that thing stored up. So that's how fathers got down. All right, we wasn't nice guys. We wasn't just Jesus Christ and they got the blood. No, that wasn't us. We was men of war. If the Most High is a man of war, the Son is a man of war, what do you think the righteous of the men of the nation of Israel is going to be? A man of war. So Judas, he wasn't nothing to play with. He wasn't one of them, like how they say. But you can go back to the article. And that's why, Mattathias set him up. He seen that in Judas. Not that the rest of his brethren wasn't captains and leaders, because you see, as you read on in Maccabees, how they were set up. Nevertheless, Judas, he kind of had that spirit to kick it off. But this, right, I'm gonna go back to the article. I don't want to read this whole thing for sake of time, but this is kind of a good article though. It says the battle. Right, the battle of Bezor took place around a fortified town, where Judas Maccabeus and his forces confronted the uh, confronted the advancing Seleucid army. Right, the Judean rebels, through outnumbered though outnumbered by the Seleucid forces, utilized the terrain and the defense of Bethsur to their advantage, mounting a determined uh, defenses against the enemy. So, like the brother pulled up, you see how big the Seleucid Empire is, and around this time, you only had a family with a couple hundred, countrymen. We read Maccabees. These wasn't men of war. We was in captivity. We didn't have our own army set up to go forth to battle. So you had certain countrymen. We read, the third chapter, namely the second chapter. They had gathered up men and said, "Whoever is fearful of the Most High, follow me and my family." So these men, they weren't skillful. These aren't the same men that you read about in 2 Samuel, the 23rd chapter, where you had David and his mighty men, Joab, Abishai, Benaniah, Esaiel, the sons of Zerah. You didn't have these certain men. No, so when you read during the time of the Maccabees, you got to put in the aspect. These are countrymen that simply just love the Most High. These are men of war. And that shows how much greater that the Most High is, because he could set up the base man, which we were at this time, us being at that lower state, and allow us to overcome whole dynasties and empires. That's the work of the Most High. And that shows how much the Lord was dealing with this revolt. I'm gonna start at outcome. It says the battle of Zorah or Bethzur resulted in a decisive victory for the Judean rebels under the leadership of Judas Maccabeus. The Seleucid army, unable to overcome the determined resistance of the Judean fighters and the defense of Bethzur, suffered many casualties and was forced to retreat. You got retreated by a bunch of, farmers and a bunch of husbandmen. And these are mighty men, and they had all this skill and all this weaponry. And no, we was at the disadvantage, but through the Most High, and the terrain and how things were set, we was able to overcome. And you read that a lot, throughout our history. For example, 70 A.D. The Romans, as big as their empire was, it took them a long time to overcome, Jerusalem. Why? Because Jerusalem, it was on a high city with walls around about, or it was on a high hill with walls around about, and we used the terrain to our advantage. Read about how Gad and the so-called Americas, when Esau came over, he had a lot of wars. Gad, he used the terrain to his advantage. He used the trees, he used the so-called guerrilla warfare, and that's how a lot of times we overcame these battles when we was at disadvantage. We used what we had around us, and that's all through the Spirit of the Most High. So I'm gonna read that same account in First Maccabees, the fourth chapter. All right, let's go to First Maccabees chapter 4, verse 29. Right, it's the book of First Maccabees chapter 4 and verse number 29. Now, like I said before, this battle, it was many battles that was fought before that led up to this battle. From the first chapter, well, really from the second chapter to the fourth chapter, this is, years of war. All right, year plus worth of wars and battles. So this is the book of First Maccabees 4 and 29. So they came to Idumea, right, Edom, and pitched their tents at Bethsura, which is the province or the area, the region that the battle was fought. And Judas met them with 10,000 men. And when he saw that mighty army, he prayed and said, "Blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel." That's a cut, right? Savior of Israel, not all people. It says, "Blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel, who didst quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of thy servant David, and gavest the host of strangers into the hands of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and his armor bearer. Shut up this army in the hand of thy people Israel, and let them be confounded in their power and horsemen." So you had 10,000 Israelites who went against a great multitude of hosts. And guess what? We end up getting the overthrow. And this is Judas calling upon the Lord before going forth, entering into that battle that we reading about. It says, verse 32, "Make them to be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at the destruction." It says, cast them down with the sword of them that love thee, and let all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the hosts of Silas about 5,000 men, even about even before them were they slain. Now when Silas saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judah's soldiers, that go back to Sirach the 10th chapter, verse 1 on down. However, the leader and the captain of that kingdom or that government or army is, that same spirit is gonna fall and trickle down to his men. So Silas, he's seen the manliness and the boldness of Judah's soldiers. Why did Judas soldiers have that spirit? Because Judas had that spirit, and that exhortation and that praise that he gave to the Most High, it trickled down to the rest of the 10,000 men that was with him. It says the manliness of Judah's soldiers and how they were ready to either live or die valiantly. He went into Antioch and gathered together the company of the strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he pursued to come again into Judea. And through that battle, when you read verse 52 on down, we was actually able to go back and to rededicate the altar, which is where you get the Feast of Dedication or Hanukkah from, Hanukkah, right? I'm going to jump down to verse 52, get right to the point. So after we won that decisive battle, this is the next step that we took forth, verse 52. "And on the 5th and 20th day of the month, of the ninth month, which is called the month Casalu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offered sacrifices according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings, which they had made." Right, because according to the law, the altar was defiled, they tore it down. We know Esau and his freakism, they defiled the altar. So they tore the old one down and they built up the new altar. Reading on, jumping down to verse 59. It says, "Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained the days of dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year, by the space of 8 days from the 5 and 20th day of the month Caselu with mirth and gladness. And that's what you call the feast of dedication that was ordained after the battle of Besor, which was a decisive battle that allowed us to rededicate the altar and take back that providence through the Spirit.
Con. And I'm actually going to go into the feast of dedication as well. So after the battle of Beth Sur, you have something called Hanukkah, or the feast of dedication. You may have heard Hanukkah. What they say, they make us celebrate. You ever heard of Kwanzaa?
Yep.
So you see, Amalek can celebrate Hanukkah, but they give you an African holiday. Kwanzaa has nothing to do with our people. Kwanzaa has absolutely nothing to do with our people. We celebrate Hanukkah, the feast of dedication. That belongs to us. And you may have heard that in the world. Always around the time of Christmas, people celebrate Christmas, or and it also actually goes into it, the Lupercalia, which is where Christmas comes from, the Roman festival. You had our people celebrating Hanukkah, or the feast of dedication. But let me actually scroll up right here. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
I can see it.
See, it's frozen, man. All right, we can start right here. Right? See my mouse. And it says the Maccabees were the first Jews who fought to defend their religious beliefs, right? Rather than their lives.
Like the brother cut out. Salakia. Right, that's same, man. All right. Well, until he come back, I'm gonna pull this quick precept. That's off. Let's go to Mark 4. So until the brother kind of, come back on, let's go to Mark chapter 4 and verse 14. It says, "The sower soweth the word, and these are they by the wayside where the word is sown. But when they have heard, sin cometh immediately and taketh away the word that was sown in their hearts." So all this is spiritual, Nevertheless, until he come back, you can get a couple precepts touching on Judas Maccabees, right? The brother about our first Maccabees, the third chapter. How Judas, he was like a lion in all his wars. All right, so Judas, he was the one that Menathias again chose to rise up and to defend the temple. So I'm actually picked off on where I left off on First Maccabees, the fourth chapter, actually touching on so-called dedication or feast of dedication and Hanukkah. I'm gonna start at verse 47 in First Maccabees, the fourth chapter. Let's see if the brother trying to get on yet. Yeah, so until he hop on, I'm gonna just bring this out through the spirit. All right, this First Maccabees chapter 4. Con, you good?
Yeah. So what was the last thing you heard?
You was bringing out the article. You had just start reading it and you cut out. But I was actually gonna touch more on dedication starting at verse 47. But you can finish out what you had.
Yeah, that's Satan, man. As soon as I started bringing it out, they was like, nah, you crazy.
Yeah, that was saying.
All right, we can go back to it. Yeah, messengers of Satan, man. All right. Let me know if you can see it now.
Con.
All right, and it says origin and history, right? So this is going into Hanukkah. Like I said, this is going into the rededication of the temple. And it says Hanukkah commemorates the Maccabean Hasmonean victories over the forces of Seleucid King Antios IV Epiphanies, right, from 175 164 BC, as we brought out. All right, and this is after the Battle of Beth Sur. And in the rededication of the temple on Kislev 25, right, or so-called December, what they'll call December 25th, right, led by Mattathias and his sons Judas Maccabeus, right, who died in 161 BCE, that Maccabees were the first Jews who fought to defend their religious beliefs rather than their lives, right? We gave up our lives for the laws. Read Second Maccabees 7:1, Second Maccabees chapter 6 and verse 30, with Eleazar, who didn't want to go to a strange religion and eat swine's flesh. So that's what our fathers were doing, giving up their lives, right? According to First Maccabees, a text of the Apocrypha, which excluded from Jewish canon, but including the Roman Catholic, right? It's canonized, so I don't know why they put that. Deuterocanonical books and Eastern Orthodox Old Testament canons. Antiochus had invaded Judea, tried to Hellenize the Jews, and desecrate the Second Temple in Jerusalem, right? And that just goes to show you that the Bible is a history book. And that's why we do W5 history, to show you that this Bible is a history book, right? But it says following the Israelite victory, the 3-year struggle against Antiochus. So it took 3 years. It wasn't overnight. This struggle against Antiochus was 3 years. And remember how we said earlier, these things are going to come back on the earth again. There's going to be a struggle against, guess what? Who's just like Antiochus, who exalts himself as a god? Hey, so-called Donald Trump. Let me pull this man up real quick. This man has the same spirit as Antiochus IV. He wants everybody to have that a great American pride. See that? Everybody exalts this man. Everybody loves this man. He's your damn Antiochus, man. Your damn Claudius. He's the one that's gonna bring person. He's the one. He's the domestic terrorist and fight for this country. Right? So when we while we bringing it out, that's hey, he's gonna try to Hellenize Judea all over again if you have ears to hear. Right? But going back into it, it says following the Israelite victory in a 3-year struggle against Antiochus, Judas ordered the cleansing and the restoration of the temple. And after it was purified, a new altar was installed and dedicated on this day. Right? Judas then proclaimed that the dedication and restored temple should be celebrated every year for 8 days, beginning on that date. In Second Maccabees, the celebration, right, in the Apocrypha, the celebration is compared to the festival of Succoth, the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Booths, right? It's just like the Feast of Tabernacles we kept a couple weeks back, which the Jews were unable to celebrate because of the invasion of Antiochus. Hanukkah, or Feast of Dedication, therefore emerged as a celebration of the dedication, as the word itself suggests. And we just went into the Apocrypha to rededicate the temple. That's why we gotta celebrate these feast days. That honors our forefathers. The destruction of the so-called white man by a so-called Haitian or the Levites, man. And all of our feast days were spiritual too, because we are the temple of the Lord. Right? Going down a little further, although the traditional practice of lighting candles at Hanukkah was not established in the books of Maccabees, a custom most likely started relatively early. The practice is enshrined in the Torah of the Talmud, which describes the miracle of the oil in the temple. Right, according to the Talmud, right, the Talmud is just from Genesis to Malachi, right, the Old Testament. When Judas Maccabees entered the temple, he found only a small jar of oil that had not been defiled by Antiochus. The jar contained only enough oil to burn for 1 day, but miraculously the oil burned for 8 days until the new consecrated oil could be found. So it burned for 8 days in the temple. And that's why we light our menorahs. And it's a lot spiritual than the surface level, but we just want you to understand that this holy day was established because we was giving damn hell to Esau, man. We were giving hell to Esau. So if you're a black Hispanic Native American out there watching this and you're trying to figure out what this thing is about, well, don't celebrate Christmas this year. Celebrate Hanukkah, man. Celebrate Feast of Dedication, Feast of Lights, because your forefathers was putting Esau to flight. Let me bring this back out. Like you said, First Maccabees chapter, actually, But it's our first Maccabees chapter 4. And if you have anything on that, King, you can bring it up.
Kind of like, you broke it down.
Come. Right? And that's what the brother brought out earlier, First Maccabees 4 and 55. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising the God of heaven, who had given them good success. So the Most High established this thing. The Most High established the Feast of Dedication. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold. We had crowns of gold and with shields. And the gates and the chambers they were new to hang doors upon them. This was very great gladness among the people. There's a feedback, King.
It's like,
It says, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days from the 5 and 20th day of the month Castle, right, so-called December, with mirth and gladness. And at that time, they also built up Mount Zion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down as they have done before. And they set there a garrison to keep it and fortify Bethsor, right? This is after that battle that we just had, to preserve it, that the people might have a defense against Idumea or the Edomites or the so-called white man. So this is where Hanukkah came from. It came from the blood and the bloodshed of Esau, slaying the heathen, right? This is a very honorable high holy day that was set up by our fathers that we're reading about in the Bible and that we're also reading about in history. But you got it, King.
we go to the next article. You got it. You got it. If that was it on this one.
We go to John. Yeah, John.
Yeah. So is right. So
wait, man, my computer's freezing.
You said what?
Look, my computer's freezing. I can't even click on the next one.
Yeah, same.
Hold on, let me see if this pops up. Oh, you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. You can go to John Hyrcanus the first. All right, I'm gonna touch on that real. I'm gonna tap it real quick, just for sake of time. But that's right. You got a brother named by the name of John Hyrcanus. You know that you read about again in First Maccabees 2, one of his brethren. Right.
Did it pop up?
It's up there. Right. So I'm gonna bring this up. John Hyrcanus. Now you read about John Hyrcanus in the precepts. All right. So it says John Hyrcanus the first. Now it says he was a high priest and ruler of the Judean nation from 130 around 135, 134 to 104 BC. Under his reign, the Hasmonean kingdom of Judea and ancient that's really Israel, right? But ancient Palestine attained power and great prosperity, and the Pharisees and scholarly sect with popular backing, and the Sadducees and artistoric sects that compromised the priesthood became well-defined religious parties. So you have a man by the name of John Hyrcanus. Now let's go to not John. Let's go to First Maccabees, the 13th chapter. He was set up after Jonathan, right? He was set up after Jonathan had gave up the ghost. So after Judas, because you had Judas, he gave up the ghost. Eventually, he got killed in battle. All right, I believe you read that in First Maccabees, the ninth. So you read about in First Maccabees, the 9th chapter, how Judas he gave up the ghost, he got killed in battle, and John came into power. After you had John, all right, in First Maccabees 13, John he ended up getting captured, and he ended up being killed in battle. And who was next up? It was Simon. So I meant to say Simon. Yeah, Simon that was next up. After Simon, Simon had two sons. All right, he had John, right? and the other son is skipping my name, is leaving me. But he had John and let me see what the other son name was real quick.
You talking about after Simon's death?
After Simon death. For John or first Maccabees 16. Right, you had Simon and you had, let me see, John and Judas. That's what it was. John and Judas. Salakia. Go to first Maccabees the 16th chapter. So after you had Judas, you had Jonathan, you had Simon. And then after Simon, you have his two sons. His two sons, you had Judas and you had John. John is going into John Hyrcanus, the brother that we about to read about in First Maccabees 16, going into that article. That's the context. Like I said, time will permit us to go through all of it right now. Nevertheless, and you can pull up the family tree actually real quick for the visual. I'll see that. Right. So you got Mattathias. All right, you got his sons. Right. This one it's kind of lacking.
Yeah, I mean they didn't have the important. They didn't have all the five sons. They had like the important. I guess the important lineage.
Yeah, it's this one. It's not. I mean, it's not the best. But nevertheless, as you see, you see John Hyrcanus though from 134 to 104 BC, the son of Simon. You know, so you had Mattathias, you had Judas and Jonathan. After those two, Simon came into power. After Simon gave the ghost, he passed it down to John, his two sons. He had John, he had Judah. John kind of took on the lead, and through John Hyrcanus, a event kind of took place. So this first Maccabees chapter 16 and verse number, I'm gonna start at verse 1. It says, Then came up John from Gazra and told Simon his father that Zendebius had told his father what Zendebius had done. Wherefore Simon called his two oldest sons, Judas and John, and said unto them, I and my brethren and my father's house have ever from our youth unto this day fought against the enemies of Israel, and things have prospered so well in our hands that we have delivered Israel oft times. Right? Because you read from First Maccabees, the second chapter, all the way up to the 16th chapter, we was prevailing. So he's letting his sons know, hey, we was prevailing, we was doing A, B, and C, we having it good with the Most High, and this kingdom and this dynasty that we set up. It says, but now I am old, and yea, by God's mercy, are of a sufficient age. Be ye instead of me, meaning come in my stead and my rulership, and my brother, and go and fight for our nation, and the help from heaven be with you. So he chose his son, namely John, to rise up instead to continue to fight, on the Lord's with the Lord's people. Now let's go to that article real quick, showing that Simon set up his son John, and we're gonna see one of the chief acts that John did when he was set up. That's not really accounted of in depthly in the scriptures. This thing's real small. You can zoom in, Baba Kashaw.
You see it?
Yeah, it's a little better. Right? It says Hyrcanus was the youngest son of Simon Maccabeus. Now, in the precepts, they say, it was the eldest sons, but it says Hyrcanus was the youngest son of Maccabeus, right? The son of Simon Maccabeus, and thus a member of the Hasmonean dynasty, so called after an ancestor named Hasmoneus. In 137 BC, he and his brother Judas commanded the forces that heroically repelled the invasion of Judea led by Cenobietus, like how we just read. It says the general of the Syrian king Antiochus. What's that?
The seven Sidetes.
Kind of seven. Sedates. And 135, Hyrcanus, right, brother-in-law to Ptolemy, governor of Jericho, assassinated. So is this Hyrcanus the first?
I believe so. Oh, it says,
I want to scroll down and get right to the point. Oh, actually, there it is, right there. Uh, so I can show you with a highlight where it say Idumea. I'm gonna read that sentence right
oh, yeah.
there. Yeah, start at although he struggled.
Con.
Yeah, it says although he struggled in vain to destroy Ptolemy, he successfully, all right, thwarted Syrian incursion by alliance with Rome and conquered the unfriendly neighboring territories of Samaria and Idumea. So the brother, he got a map. We can pull it up after this, but it's a map showing how each brother, when it came into power, how much the kingdom of Hasmonean dynasty expanded, and how we began to take back Israel. We began to go to Samaria, the northern kingdom, and we reached as far as Idumea, which is Edom, Esau. It says he forced Idumea to convert to Judaism, and that's where you get Amalek from. I'm not gonna say the whole word because it's YouTube be tweaking. Nevertheless, you got the U and then ISH, man. Kind of put the two and two together, right? The U ish, man. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where you kind of get the origin of them from. Yeah, you got the Khazars, and on top of that, you got the men that Judas actually converted to keep God's laws. So at one point in time, Esau was actually keeping the laws. He kept the Sabbath day. All right, he kept Feast of Dedication. He kept the Passover. He kept these diverse days that were set up. That's why Esau is keeping it to this very day because of John Hyrcanus. He was set up to force Esau to keep these laws. Because as any king did, the subjects under you and the heathens, he kind of convert them to serve your God to get the nation under one accord. So that's what he did. It says the first example of conversion imposed by the Judeans and their history upon the death of Hyrcanus was succeeded by his eldest son Aristobulus I. It's the point right here. It says Hyrcanus' reign was the last under which Judea was a powerful united state. So once John Hyrcanus died, he had two sons as well. He had Aristobulus, and he had who else did he have? Right, Aristobulus. He had someone else too. Right,
Who?
slipping my mind, but he had Aristobulus. He had another son that reigned, and through
You
there it
talking
was
about,
tension. You said what?
you talking Alexander?
It may have been. It might have been. Right.
Alexander Junius.
Yeah, yeah. So it was ever since John Hyrcanus gave up the ghost, it was much tension between the sons and who should take spot in ruling the kingdom, which caused a big division in Israel. Nevertheless, John Hyrcanus, he was set up and made Esau actually convert to keeping the commandments. And that's where you get the modern day Amalek keeping our laws and our homeland as we speak right now. You know, that all goes back to First Maccabees, the 16th chapter, where he was set up through the Spirit. But that's all I wanted. That's the chief thing I wanted on that article, though. That's all I had on that.
Con. And I'm gonna bring up the map again. So as you can see under each empire, let me see where's that. Here we go. All right, the Hasmonean kingdom, right? So let me zoom in. All right, Judea after the Hasmonean revolt. So this is after Mattathias, right? You have Bethzor, Jerusalem, Jericho, right? This Mattathias is lived in the suburbs of the region. Remember, the Levites were in the suburbs, so he was kind of in Modin. Modin will be over here somewhere. And after the Hasmonean, after the Mattathias rebelled with his brothers, this is the boundaries they established. All right, this is the boundaries they established. Not that big, but I'm just like Modin's right here. These are the boundaries they established. Right, see, they're in the wilderness, right, in Gezer. After that, you had Jonathan. Right, Jonathan has helped establish this Gezer, Modin. You can read about these battles in the Apocrypha, right? Gezer, Lod, Modin, Baal, right, or Bethel, Jericho, or it was already established. Yeah, over here and across the Jordan as well. So this is under in kind of southern, south of Jerusalem as well. So this is under Jonathan. And then who else? Simon, right? Under Simon. And this will be under Simon, right? Samaria, Shechem went up kind of Samaria all throughout right here. Beersheba, right? Some land right here. And then after Simon, you got Aristobulus. You got John, right? Kind of established over here, parts over here, right? And then after that, we got Aristobulus, which is kind of the darker maroon up here, right? So this is over 100 years of just sheer will against the Grecians. We had our way with the Grecians. And then the last, Alexander Jannaeus established this boundary door, Caesarea. So this is Israel. They reestablished the borders of all of Israel, Rapha, right? Generations from here, from this land, guess what? The Lord got them great victory. And this is literally the borders of Israel. They established Israel, man. You know? So this is beautiful. Generations of passing it down the line of killing Esau, embedded in their blood, man. Before, we're gonna read about what happened, but how this kind of transitions into the New Testament. Because a lot of people don't understand how it goes from Malachi to the New Testament, or how it goes from Second Maccabees to the New Testament, or to Rome, to Herod the Great. But we're gonna get into it. You got anything on John Hyrcanus II?
Oh yeah, I did.
Okay.
All right, it's John Hyrcanus II. So I gotta you can go back to the family tree real quick one last time. I don't know if we might have to pull up a better one though. I don't know if they got John Hyrcanus II on there. So John Hyrcanus II, he was also a big he played a big pivotal role. Let me see if he on here.
See, y'all here?
Okay, Khan. Yeah, so John Hyrcanus II, he also played a big role. So John Hyrcanus II, he actually rebelled against his brother. You had a big civil war that went on, right? And he actually ended up rebelling against his own brother. All right, so let's touch on that article real quick. And this is like the brother said, this is the transitioning point from us having the rulership at this time to the kingdom slowly being transitioning to the Romans. Because believe it or not, like the brother said, we was going against the Greeks. And a lot of the times we had alliances with Rome, actually. And those alliances with Rome, Rome kind of took advantage of that. And things kind of transpired down the line. So let's go to that article real quick. All right, this says John Hyrcanus II. It says was high priest of Judea from 76 to 40 BC, and with his brother Aristobulus II, last of the Macedonian, quote unquote, Hasmonean.
Maccabean.
Huh?
The Maccabean, he said Macedonian.
Oh, damn, I'm going off. Right, Maccabean, Hasmonean, dynastic rulers. And I believe their mother, right? Their mother was actually quote unquote queen before this. All right, their mother was set up after Alexander Janus died.
Mm-hmm.
Mother was set up to be queen. She waited for her sons to be, at a good age, and she had to choose which one she wanted to be king. She ended up choosing the older one, to be the priest and king during this time. And then the younger one, he really didn't like that, John. So things kind of transpired with that, and we'll see how it played out. It says under Hyrcanus, Valenciating leadership, Judea, southern of the three traditional divisions of the ancient Palestine today, mostly in Israel, fell into Valencius to Rome. So they fell to Rome. Why? Because they was once allied with Rome, but they end up falling to Rome. Let's go to the next part. It says when his father, Alexander Janus, right, who we just talked about, when his father, Alexander Janus, died in 76 AD or BC, Hyrcanus was appointed high priest, right? And on his mother's death in 67 BC, he assumed the rulership of Judea, right? Because Alexander reigned, he died, his wife reigned, she ended up giving a ghost, and then he came in instead right after. It says, after a troubled reign of 3 months, his warlike brother, see, he kind of remind me of Joab, but just a Levite, right? His warlike brother, or probably Absalom, but just a Levite. Hebrew, his warlike brother drove him right from power, and that's what Absalom did to David. He just wanted to drive his own kindred out of power. That's off. Preeminence, covetousness, you know, is madness. His own blood brother, right? It says Hyrcanus sought counsel from Antipater. All right, who was that? That's Antipater the Idumean, the same people that we have under bondage, keeping and forcing them to keep our laws. So during this time, Esau, they were still keeping our laws. Why? Because John, he set that up, or namely Simon, but John, he set that up. It says Hyrcanus sought from Antipater, satrap of Idumea, a neighboring province conquered by Hyrcanus' grandfather, John Hyrcanus I, who seeing the weak will Hyrcanus a possible tool to his own desire to control Judea. So they seen a division, right? Rome, they kind of seen a division and they capitalized off of it. It says, induced him to wage war on Aristobulus, his own brother. After a brutal struggle, the two brothers appealed to the great Roman general Pompey to be their to be their arbiter, right? Arbiter. So they kind of sought to the so-called white men to hash things out. That's all. Two brothers get into it. You run to the so-called white man for help. That's all. It says Pompey also, seeing in Hyrcanus a means of controlling Judea, restored him to high priesthood and some semblance of civil authority. So Esau decided who was going to be the high priest. This is complete, wickedness and madness. Two brothers get into it. One has, an evil spirit of preeminence and overthrow. You overthrow your own blood brother. Y'all get into it. Then you both run to the so-called white man and ask him, who do you think should be in leadership? You go to another, you're a king. You go to another king that has nothing to do with your nations. And you ask him, what do you think we should do? If this is not off, it's the words is just unfair. It's unexplainable how stupid this is.
And everything's set up by the will of the Lord. But if they never had a civil war, I'm led to believe during the Roman Empire, we would have had our own nation within the Roman Empire, and we would be rivaling the Romans. But everything, is Bible prophecy. But the reason why the Romans even try to take down Jerusalem is because they seen an opportunity, because two brothers trusted in Esau.
Yeah.
There was already a strong nation at that time. If they just figured it out, who knows how long the Hasmonean dynasty could have been, man. But everything's set up by the Lord. We know that. But if Esau never seen a way to get in, then he couldn't have gotten
in. And if you compare the Hasmonean dynasty map that you just showed to ancient Israel, you see how much we damn near took back the whole nation. All right, we damn near took back if you look up ancient map of Israel, you got Judah, you got Benjamin, Levi, you got all the way up northern to Dan. All right, and out of northern tribes, Manasseh, Ephraim. Hey, it's damn near identical on how we took back that part of the land. Now, before that, again, it was all the Greeks. We had no inheritance. The Greeks ran there, so it was just a whole bunch of buildup for vanity at the end of the day, because it all got overthrown, all because of hatred and covetousness. You're actually gonna pull it up?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could kind of do like a side by side.
Israel and David.
Actually, you could really do during the time of Solomon, because that's the most built up.
Yeah, it's literally the same. Let's see if this is a good one.
You probably got to do like 12 tribes or something. You got to be specific with Esau.
Let me see if this 12. This should be cool. Let me see. Let me know if you can see this.
You might have to zoom in a little bit.
Yeah. Like you see this?
Yeah, I can see it. See that? Yeah, so that was yeah, they damn near took back the whole thing. All that was so-called Ptolemies, and they put all that work in to get it all back. No, they almost got all of it back. Look at that.
Yeah. All we need is really is Tyree. All you really need is this section right here.
Yeah, and a
And
little bit more eastward.
yep. An amulet right here. And it would have literally been all of Israel taken back. So we was giving these Grecians hell.
Yeah, I'm led to believe Northern Kingdom was getting in there too. You got Bethel. That's Bethel. That's the capital of Ephraim, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bethel meaning a house of God. So from Bethel on up, that's Northern Kingdom in there. You know, you got Dan, you got Reuben. Simeon was more so southern, but Manasseh and Ephraim, all those is Northern Kingdom. So I'm led to believe you had Northern Kingdom still in there, even helping us in the wars. All right, and like how it says Samaria. That's the same area, Samaria, Providence, that you read about in the so-called New Testament and Isaiah, that Northern Kingdom area, right? The chief of Northern Kingdom, right? The head of Ramah, I believe is said, roughly
Mm-hmm.
paraphrased in Isaiah 7. But yeah, that's a quick point. I wanted to make a quick correlation showing the two kingdoms and how we almost kind of got that back. But it took a little bit of folly. That's why the Lord said a little leaven if the whole lump. In 1 Corinthians, I believe that's the 5th chapter. All it took was a little bit of sin, a little bit of time for Jake to go off, and Esau was plotting the whole time till he just slithered his way in there and just overthrew it. Is there more here? Is there more on that?
Oh, here?
Yeah, I'm gonna read the next. I'm gonna read a little bit of this one. It says, during the rest of his life, Hyrcanus II was was manipulated by those who wished to use him. He
Wow.
was deprived of his office by the military commander, uh, pro proconsul, right, Louis Gabinus. He was restored to it again by Julius Caesar as a reward for Hyrcanus. So he was set up as a puppet king after he got overthrown, basically.
Yeah.
You kind of scored down a little bit too. Actually, I see a slot here. It says, where is that just at? I just lost it. I'm gonna read that last part again. For Hyrcanus' support after Caesar had defeated Pompey at the Battle of Pharsalus. And then in 42 BC, he was rendered powerless by Mark Antony's appointment of Antipater's two sons, Herod and Phalasel, the uh, the tetrarchs or rulers of Judea. And you read about that in the so-called New Testament. So that's where you get Herod from. Mark Antony and you get that from Mark Antony, how he came into power, how Julius Caesar overthrew Pompey, Rome is being set up. Now you have the Herodic dynasty slowly forming over the Hasmonean dynasty that was set up. I'm gonna read that last part again. It says, right, and then in 14 BC, he was rendered powerless by Mark Antony's appointment of Antipater's two sons, Herod and Phasaelus, as tetrarchs and rulers of Judea. You read about those tetrarchs. Reread the book of Acts. And you read, throughout Matthew, the so-called New Testament, you read about that whole Herodic dynasty and those families that was set up. Again, it didn't really touch on it in this article, but you had the Jews with Aristobulus and Hyrcanus mingling with the Romans um through that so what I'm looking for. I just said it earlier. Through that alliance that they had with each other. So those families was mingling. And real quick, you go to Acts 26. I believe that's Acts 26. What they called that Edomite woman, a Jewess, which is why in the so-called New Testament you have Edomites actually being called Jewess, right? because they intermingle with the Jews in that Herodic in that Hasmonean family. I gotta find that precept. Oh
All
man,
right,
what's
Acts
that?
26.
I believe it's X-26 where it called the woman a Jewess.
Acts 24 and 24.
That may be it. X-24. Let me see. Yeah, Drusilla. It's the book of Acts, chapter 4, and verse number 24. It says, and after certain days, Felix came with his wife, Drusilla, which was a Jewess. He sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith of Christ. And that's not a Jewess as, her father was really Israelite, but, she was a Jewess. No, she was an Edomite, being called a Jewess. I believe her father was, I actually say who her father is. We go into the blue letter, but her father was one of these generals, right? Or one of these so-called leaders during the Roman Empire. But why was she called a Jewess? Because the family that she was a part of and stemmed from came from the Hasmonean family. And through that intermingling with Rome and they came into power, that's why they kept the customs. That's why in the book of Matthew, the 27th chapter, between the 26th and 27th chapter, you had these councils that was set up that Yahweh had to go to, and they went let me just get it real quick. Right? They told him to proclaim judgment. Matthew chapter 26 or 27 and verse number where is that? When they went to Pontus. Matthew 27. I want to say 19.
So when they went to Pontus.
Yeah, when the Jews they brought him up to Pontus so they can so he can commit judgment. Let me see.
You also can get. Let me see if it's in John 19. I know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah, they kind of brought him up on some coonery. But the reason they brought him to Pontus was because Pontus, he knew the laws. Why do he know the laws? Because John Hyrcanus, he converted all the Edomites to keeping the laws. Man, I wish I could find this precept. It's the wrong time to forget it.
It's all good.
I have to find that joint. Right. If anyone know in the comments, y'all can bring it out. Nevertheless, that's what happened though. That's why you got, situations like that of Jews running to the so-called white man in the so-called New Testament because they, to an extent knew the law through the hand of John Hyrcanus. But that's the main point I wanted to get on that article though. That's it on that.
And I want to kind of touch on a little bit of that too, of Mark Antony, because Mark Antony, he wasn't a nobody. He was a general. And he was a general. So he wasn't a nobody. He appointed Herod the Great and taking his sons, Herod the Great and another dude, right? Another Edomite that he appointed, right, to be set up over Jerusalem. And that's how you have the transfer. This is around 40 AD. 40 BC, 30 BC. And that's how you have the transfer from the Roman, from Jerusalem being, ruled by the Hasmonean dynasty. Now you have Herod the Great, how you got an Edomite, sitting and Pilate, the chief priest, and all of these families, because you have this man named Mark Antony. Mark Antony, after that civil war between those two brothers, he used that as a way to control Jerusalem. And that's how the Romans actually through deception. That's how Esau is. Everything's always through deception. But it says Mark Antony and his ally and wife, Cleopatra, were defeated by Octavian, right? Soon to be Emperor Augustus, right? And we know he's the second emperor of Rome, right? In the naval battle of Actium of the coast of Greece on his date in 31 BC, 13 years after the assassination of Julius Caesar, Antony had appointed Herod the Great as a king of Jerusalem and Galilee, which ended the Maccabees' descendants, the Hasmonean dynasty. So we went from the beginning of the Hasmonean dynasty, the midst of the Hasmonean dynasty with the Battle of Besor, the rededication of the temple, right? Antios is the fourth, and what he tried to do to our people. We didn't really get into the accounts of where he, the tortures and the torments that came during that time for time's sake, but there was a lot of tortures and torments, and then now transforming into the end of the dynasty where it was over 130 or 40-year rule of our people to the end where now you have the so-called white man back in power through what? Through Jake not keeping Leviticus 19:17, loving your brother as you love yourself. It always goes back to breaking the law. It always goes back to us just hating each other. That damn Deuteronomy 28:54 curse, where guess what? Now you have Esau in power to this very day. Right? So that's how that transition happened from the Old Testament to the Apocrypha to the New Testament. Right? And it says, which ended the Maccabean rule, descendants of the Hasmonean dynasty. Despite Herod's alliance with the losing side in the struggle for domination of Rome, he managed to regain and retain his throne under Augustus, ruling Judea for nearly 4 decades, 40 years, right? According to Josephus, Herod conducted extensive building programs, including expansion in this of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, known as Herod's Temple. That's where you get Herod's Temple from. They expanded the Second Temple, right? And the construction of the fortress at Masada. He also expanded Judean territory as the Hasmoneans had done through military conquest. He was a murderous, much despised leader who claimed to be Jewish. Esau claimed to be Jewish, and you have that happening to this very day. Let alone king, was constantly disputed by the Sanhedrin and priesthood, but he did practice Judaism, as did Judaizing peoples dominated by Judea, at least when he was among his people. Herod's rule led to the undermining of the Sanhedrin authority and the switching of popularity loyalty to the Pharisees. That's why the Pharisees loved Rome so much, and they were scared of Yahweh Shah, because guess what? They would take away our place in our nation. Right? They didn't like the disciples. They didn't like preaching the truth because Herod put the Pharisees in play. According to the Bible, it was Herod who sought to kill Yahweh Shah and behead John the Baptist, man. And you read about that in Matthew chapter 14 and verse 1. Let me give a precept real quick, touching on Herod. So this is that guy. That's him. Right? That's that client king Herod, who Mark Antony put in power, and then Herod put the Pharisees in power. He wanted to kill Yahweh Shah. I hope this is all linking up. This is Matthew 14:1. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard of the fame of Yahweh Shah and said unto his servants, this is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. For Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. Right? His brother Philip's wife. That's adultery. And John called him out on it. For John said unto him, it is not lawful for thee to have her. Because didn't he claim to be Jewish? Didn't he claim to follow the customs of the Jews? What did it say? What did it say? Which at least among his people. So again, with other so-called, Edomites and other so-called people that claim to be Jews, he claimed to be a Jew, but guess what? He was going off, and John corrected him on it. That's why John corrected him, because he claimed to be a Jew. He claimed to follow our customs. So John was like, well, this is not our customs. And guess what? Herod, being the Edomite that he is, he tried to put him to death. And he feared the multitude because they counted him as a prophet. And then this man Herod was keeping birthdays, and he was lusting other women. And guess what? John the Baptist got put to death, man. But this is that same guy that was put in power. So we're showing you the transition from the Hasmonean dynasty, starting with Judas, all the way, until Aristobulus and John Hyrcanus II fought as a civil war. They went to Julius Caesar. They went to Antigonus, and then Mark Antony was a consultant and put, Antigonus' sons into power. And one of his sons just happened to be Herod. And that's how you have Matthew chapter 2 and verse 1. So that's kind of that transition of power. But that was it on that. Did you have anything else, King?
Not lie.
So this was an in-depth breakdown going into the Hasmonean dynasty. going into what happened during that time of the Maccabees, how the Feast of Dedication, which is coming up in a few weeks, which in about a month or so, how did that get into play? And then how did Esau come into power and rule Judea all throughout the Gospels, man? This is some deep history, and there's a lot more to this as well with the tortures and the torments. The 6 Syrian Wars. It's a lot to go into, But let me get one more precept real quick. I'm gonna bring it out. We got to understand this history because these things are written for our learning. Let's see if this is what I want. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 11. It's 1 Corinthians 10 and 11. Now, all these things happen unto them for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Right? So these things were written for our admonition. These things are written for what? Upon whom the ends of the world are come. And we are in the end of the world. So when we read about the Hasmonean dynasty, when we're reading about how Esau got into power through two brothers, fighting each other, just like all throughout history, it's the same, but it's written for us to learn. These things happened to our fathers for examples. All the battles that Judas won through faith, that Jonathan and Simon won through faith, and the battles that we face today, that was all for an example. How they restored the kingdom literally from nothing. They were literally out. Read the book of 1st and 2nd Maccabees. They were outnumbered every war. Show me the account where Judas had more soldiers than the Greeks, than the Seleucians. They didn't, but they reestablished the kingdom by the power of the Most High. This is written for our warning, and upon whom the ends of the world are come. And guess what? We living in the ends of the world, man. Right? We are living. These things. This is an NLT. These things happen to them as examples for us. They were written down to warn us who live at the end of the age. We're living at the end of the age. This is a warning. These are examples that are written down and passed down to the Israelites living in America and living all throughout the world. If you got it.
I know I got the quick precept closing, Sirach 43 and 30. Or I actually want to go to 2nd Esdras 14, actually. All right, 2nd Esdras chapter 14 and verse number 40. It says, "And I took it and drank, and when I drank of it, my heart uttered understanding, and wisdom grew in my breast, for my spirit strengthened my memory." And when you get in the spirit and you start doing this research, your spirit is gonna strengthen up your memory, because now you're gonna remember the things that you went through, and this information that was never brought out is gonna feel like your spirit always knew, and now you just remembering the things of old. It's not like this stuff is hidden up from you. The spirit kind of make connection, how it was back then in ancient, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's right, that did happen. Okay, that do sound like my people, because your spirit is strengthening up your memory, and now you're realizing that all these things, all these accounts are true, that these are records that was passed down. So I want to get Sirach 43 and 30. All right, for the what's my last precept. So you want to make sure that you actually going into it first and foremost using the Bible, right, and then everything linking up with the Bible, because your spirit first and foremost is going to strengthen that memory and that understanding. So this is Sirach chapter 43 and verse 30. "When ye glorify the Most High, exalt him as much as he can, for even yet will he far exceed. And we exalt him, put forth all your strength, and be not weary, for ye can never go far enough." And no man can never go far enough when it comes to serving the true God, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. Right, you got it.
Con. So Lord willing, this was edifying. I know Satan, there was a lot of technical difficulties, but if you endure through the live, Lord willing, you have some great notes. You understand the history from the Hasmonean dynasty leading up to Matthew chapter 2 and verse 1, where Herod trying to kill Yahushua, and Matthew 14, where Herod and his family, trying to kill John the Baptist. Lord willing, you understand this history. But with that, we'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua and say Shalom.
Shalom.
Yeah, that was mighty. That was